Hello. Welcome again to Missionary Podcast. We do this every Sabbath, and we are Missionary because we train people to be medical missionaries, and that's what we do the most. So today, oh, by the way, my name is Mercy Ballard. I'm the co-founder of Missionary. We started this with Dr. Joyce Che, and this is about 5 years ago. And so it's been really exciting to do this type of ministry because that helped us also at the beginning to start a course where we train medical missionaries ready for the field to do the work, whether they're in the United States or outside in other countries. So it's been exciting to see how many people have been really following God's work and doing expanding His work. So today we have a special guest, and it's Eric Ross. And Eric, please tell us a little bit about your family.
Okay, so we live in Tennessee. My wife and I have two children, 9 and 12, and we're very blessed to have each other, have so much to be thankful for in so many ways.
Uh-huh. So you guys do homeschool, right?
Yep, we do. We do.
Uh,
I work with two ministries as
And
well.
you being overseas also working?
Yeah, when I was 19 in Zambia, Africa, and then more recently in Guatemala, which I'll mention in the presentation as well.
So your parents were medical missionaries or missionaries working overseas, or you did this after you finished high school? How do you get into mission work?
Yeah, after I finished high school and after I did some college, I went overseas. And actually, my parents did do missionary work, but that was after I left home.
Wow. Okay, and what do you do at this time?
Okay, I work directing a small ministry that handles evangelistic projects in different countries as well as in the USA. And I also work for Streams of Light International with the distribution of the Great Controversy book. And I also do some experiments with health too at home.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so that's what we're gonna be talking right now. But before we start, before you take over and do your presentation, just tell us a little highlight of your what is the topic and what are you teaching us today?
Okay, well, it's titled God's Doctor, and it's about sunlight in particular, but also fresh air. And, these are two of the eight laws of health. And sometimes we undervalue these things. And I hope by the end of the presentation, you'll have a renewed zeal for these two laws of health, and that you'll be so excited in doing your own experimentation and implementation of some of the things that I'm going to share.
Okay, can you please start us with a word of prayer?
Okay, yeah, let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we're amazed at your wisdom. Your wisdom is far beyond anything we can think or even dream of. And what the world ignores and even demonizes, you have ordained for the human race and their health and salvation. So we pray that you would teach us something new. For everyone here, may we all learn something new and be blessed and able to even share better with those we know as well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay, so you can share your PowerPoint now.
Okay, awesome. Okay, God's doctor. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna kind of weave back and forth a little bit from my experience because I'm not a researcher or a statistician or a doctor. So I'm gonna be weaving some of my experience into this, as well as quotes, inspiration, and a few studies. And I think at the end, it'll be, a decent picture, and hopefully, like I said, we'll learn something new. So let's dive in here. So, 2017, my wife and two children, we sold everything in the US and moved to Guatemala. See, these are some of the precious people that we became neighbors to. This is the Mayans of Guatemala, and we ended up buying 9 acres on top of a ridge. We owned both sides of the ridge, and we had an epic view. Um, but to this presentation, soon after we arrived, I noticed being a little fatigued. And that was something new to me for the most part, because for my early adult life, I founded a business that had to do with hard work. In fact, that was our motto. We specialize in hard work. And so the harder the better, you know. And I wasn't a big person. In fact, I was born premature, 10 weeks, 2 pounds, 9 ounces. So, you know, I wasn't big, but I had a good amount of energy. So this was a little bit new, being fatigued. And at first it was pretty excusable. I mean, I remember one time I carried 3 jackfruits, which, you know, they're pretty big. And I put 3 of them in like a bag, and I carried it, you know, by hand, you know, quite a number of miles. I don't know how long. I don't know if I carried it for an hour or something, but that really wiped me out. And as the months and years rolled on there in Guatemala, and I'll just say that it was a hot and humid environment. In fact, it was so humid, and this is going to come into play in the second half of the presentation, but that our pillows would develop a little mold on them. And even the hanging clothes in our closet would get a little moldy. And it wasn't because we shut there were no doors on the closets. It's not like there was limited airflow. So you can see it was humid and warm, hot, and anyway, so over the months and years, my fatigue got worse, and where we lived didn't help. We had to hike half an hour through difficult terrain to get from our home to the nearest road, and then it was a trip to town. So I would buy groceries in bulk, you know, because I didn't shop every every few days. So I would sometimes have to carry even up to 100 pounds for short distances, and then, you know, I'd have to hike back, and I would have to hire carriers to carry all the cargo that I would purchase. And anyways, but those trips to town, for example, they would end up tiring me out for even 2 or 3 days at a time. I would even lay in bed for the most part for, yeah, up to 3 days after some of those trips. And I was worried that my life was like crashing. And you know, this was totally unacceptable. I mean, when I was a teenager, backpacking was like my favorite thing ever. And so carrying heavy weights, you know, even for significant distances, was what I'd enjoyed. So anyways, my son and I kind of made a desperate escape to a beautiful lake. I don't know if any of you recognize this, but this is Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. It has, I believe, at least 3 volcanoes around it. These are 2 of them. Uh, it's an epic and beautiful place. And the reason we went there was because I had this hunch that my lack of energy had something to do with the humidity. And I think it's possible that I was right, but I didn't have all the pieces put together, and I'm sure I don't now even either. But anyways, we got to a dry area of Guatemala. We started out in another area, and we went to this area, and I got sunshine, fresh air, and exercise. I started slow, and it was amazing. Over time, basically, I started out from being exhausted, just climbing up a flight of stairs, to at the end, I carried my son 1,000 vertical feet up from the lake level of Atitlan up to our hotel, and wasn't overly fatigued afterward from that. So it was a great experience. And I'd recommend, if you can do something like that to just kind of take a break from whatever your normal life is and try out something like this. I mean, I didn't have money to do some fancy vacation. This whole trip, maybe only cost me maybe $100. I mean, I remember some of the hotels were like $3 a night. Okay.
Mm.
So anyways, that was neat. So now I'm gonna fast forward a bunch. I did still have health struggles after that, and we ended up moving to America. And I'm gonna fast forward a lot. So basically, in the fall of 2024, late November of 2024, just a little more than a year ago, I started thinking about sunlight and I started reading some quotes here. And I read this one. It says, "The sun is God's doctor, which brings health and strength, purifying and giving color to the blood, and we must have it."
Mm.
So I looked outside. It was cold here in Tennessee. We're about 2,000 feet. It's like, well, that's one of the 8 laws of health that I'm totally ignoring, is what I thought. I was like, when I go outside, I'm only exposing this much of my skin. So, I mean, I knew sunlight helped generate vitamin D. So I was like, well, you can count that one out, I guess. But I was like, huh. So I remember looking out my window. I was just like, huh. I wonder if I could make like a little greenhouse for a human. So, anyways, I thought maybe I could get some more sun exposure. But anyways, I'm gonna share now some more quotes and things that I learned kind of during that time. So another quote says, "It is God's doctor, comma, the sunshine is God's doctor. It will do more for you than all the drugs of all the physicians that there are in the world." That's a repetition of a truth there. "Go out into the light and warmth of the glorious sun, you pale and sickly ones, and share with vegetation its life-giving, health-dealing power." Oh man, that's great. And actually, just to go back here, the quote about God's doctor, it says that the sun brings health and strength. And I thought, oh, that sounds just like what I could use. So anyways, that really intrigued me. And then when I read this quote, it said life-giving, health-dealing power. I was like, that's incredible. I thought
Mhm.
that was funny about the pale and sickly ones. I was like, well, I guess I'm pretty pale. Uh, some of you all are more blessed with a better skin tone, but okay. So then I was reading in this book called How to Live, and this was edited, compiled, and parts of it were authored by both James and Ellen White, and um, has some very practical articles. You can find it for free online. I think I think very few people have read it, but as kind of like a precursor maybe to Ministry of Healing. But has some really cool testimonies about full body sun exposure. So here's the first one. It says, "One of the ablest lawyers in our country, a victim of long and hard brain labor, came to me a year ago, suffering with partial paralysis. The right leg and hip were reduced in size with constant pain in the loins. He was obliged, in coming upstairs, to raise the left foot first on every stair, dragging the right one after it. Pale, feeble, miserable, he told me he had been failing several years and closed with, 'My work is done. At 60, I find myself worn out.' I
Mm.
directed him to lie down under a large window and allow the sun to fall upon every part of his body, at first 10 minutes a day, increasing the time until he could expose himself to the direct rays of the sun a full hour." So I just want to pause there. Most people, if they lie down under a large window, they're not going to get the direct rays of the sun. I don't know if you guys caught that. Going through glass, a lot of window glass is going to block all of the ultraviolet. And if you have a screen, that it's going to block some. When I was in Europe, they had these gorgeous windows. I mean, I'm talking about what I'm sharing about right now was from the country of Liechtenstein. It's a very wealthy country, and the hotel I was in had like 5 foot wide window looking out to the Alps, and it just swung into the room. And so you had like this huge expanse of just fresh air, nothing between you and the air. It was amazing. So if you have a window like that, that would work. But I think most Americans don't have those windows, unfortunately. But anyway, so it's good that we were thinking about this because where there's a will, there's a way, right? So, anyways, okay. So he said his habits were not essentially altered in any other particular. In 6 months, he came running upstairs like a vigorous man of 40 and declared with sparkling eyes, I have 20 years more of work in me. Powerful, right? Okay, here's the second full body sun exposure testimony. This may seem a little radical, but here it goes. So many years ago, a clergyman who had for years been a victim of dyspepsia or stomach problems, and who had prayed for death as the only door of escape, came through the advice of a mutual friend to consult me. I advised the disuse of all medicines and much exposure to the sunshine. To secure the last mentioned influence, I directed him to enclose 20 feet square in his garden with a close fence and plant the ground within with something the cultivation of which would occupy his mind. Then, when the weather was warm, shutting himself in, he was to busy himself, quite nude, with the cultivation of his vegetables, from 10 to 60 minutes a day, always indulging in a thorough bath and friction before leaving. He was radically cured.
Mm.
So, very interesting. These were practical, for that era. Um, and today, um, there may be other methods, but the reason that full body sun exposure is so important is that we live indoor lives, which that's difficult to change. And in order to get enough sun exposure to basically mimic working outdoors, say with like long sleeves. So, I'm kind of coming at this from the vitamin D standpoint, but there are so many benefits to sunlight, and hopefully I'll share more as we go on. But I'll just pause here because I don't want to forget to say it. There are three main wavelengths to sunlight. There's the ultraviolet spectrum, then there's the visible light, and then there's infrared. So the ultraviolet is the shortest wavelength. They're really tiny, and they're easily blocked by almost any transparent material blocks it. Visible, okay, so the ultraviolet that stimulates production of vitamin D in the body, and it provides, antimicrobial benefits. It kills basically all kinds of pathogens. And so there's that benefit to your skin, getting basically sanitized by the sunlight as well as generating vitamin D. That's just ultraviolet. And then of course the visible side of the spectrum, that's great for depression, right? I mean, light is sweet. Light's awesome. And and then the infrared, these are the longest and most varied lengths of waves that provides this deep penetration into the body and it's very healing. So there are so many benefits of sunlight. The list just is almost endless, and you'll hopefully see that as we go. Some more. So, okay, so we can't easily change the fact that we live indoors. And so, in order to get enough sunlight in a short amount of time safely, right? Safely, to mimic living an outdoor life where you're working in the field, you're wearing either short or long sleeves, and you're just mainly getting sunshine on your face and maybe your hands. Uh, you basically need full body sunlight exposure for shorter amounts of time. So this was from the New England Journal of Medicine. The study showed that a light-skinned individual in a bathing suit exposed to summer sun at noon for 10 to 15 minutes can produce 10,000 to 25,000 IUs of vitamin D, which is up to 41 times the RDA. So even if you can't get sun exposure every day, never fear, your body can easily store that. And so even if you only got, an hour a week well, okay, I say an hour. I mean, here, this study only showed 10 to 15 minutes. Anyways, so you can see there's incredible benefits for full body sunbathing. So my son and I made this little thing in our yard, and it had glass. And later we switched to better materials because glass blocks so much UV, blocks 60 to 70%, even base glass. Now, like I said before, window glass probably blocks all of it, depending on your exact formulation, maybe. But that's what we started out with, and we tried it out uh, first time January of 2025, a year ago, and it was 18 degrees. And we, uh, my wife and I tried it out, and it was like magic. It was, it's absolutely freezing outside, and inside, you're exposed to the sun, and it was like a little paradise. It was like a little sanctuary of healing. And yeah, 2025 was the year of the sunshine for me. I when I transitioned from the glass to getting full wavelength sun, the difference was incredible because I was already getting full body light, but it wasn't the full natural sunlight, and so I had a lot of increased energy. In fact, it was like for weeks I felt like I could hardly sleep, and I think it was the incredible vitamin D dose I was getting or making. And another thing, one of the effects, of course, is a tanning effect, even in January. So I don't have a deep tan right now because I kind of slacked off in the fall, but we can easily see a tanning effect even in January. And the reason I bring this up, especially, is because some people say that basically, oh, well, there's no UV getting to the earth in winter, so why try to get sunlight in the winter? Well, like I mentioned a bit ago, it's not just vitamin D generation that I mean that's not the only benefit from sunlight. That's just one. Of course, vitamin D may benefit up to 2,000 chemical processes in the body. But anyways, if okay, so just to get a little nerdy here, there's UV is separated into UVA and UVB, and UVB is what is specifically the only wavelength range that can stimulate vitamin D production, and it's also the one that's mainly responsible for tanning. So if you get a tanning effect, it's high level proof that you're generating vitamin D. And the more sunlight you get, the deeper your tan will be, and that's the body's natural protection from any of, well, not any, but the main protection against skin damage from the UV itself. So basically, it's hard to get too much vitamin D because the more sunlight you get, the deeper your tan will get, if you're light skinned, of course. Okay. So yeah, 2025, this is just a sample of my log that I kept. That's just part of it, of course. But I logged 110 days of sun exposure, and it was a total of 68 hours. That's about an average of 37 minutes for every day that I got sun exposure. And then, of course, I divided that. Like I turned my body, so I have four sides. If you lay on your sides and your back and your stomach, so that's only less than 10 minutes per side. So no one area of my skin was getting an excessive amount of sunlight. I mean, pretty much everyone recognizes that a few minutes of sunlight is probably good for you, except people that are very hyper about putting sunscreen on or something like that. Well, I don't want to be, I don't want to speak bad about anyone who uses sunscreen or anything like that. I still use sunscreen. For example, if I know I'm going to get overexposed and I might get a sunburn if I didn't use it, for example. Um, okay, so here are some good resources. This is a free book by Dr. Zane Kime, Sunlight. You can find it online. And just share one page here. I don't know if you can read this easily, but I'll read just a little bit. It said, men such as Herodotus, that was a Greek, and Antyllus, a Roman surgeon, believed in the beneficial effects of sunlight in promoting physical fitness. They believed that the sun feeds the muscles. So, anyways, I could go on, but this book talks a lot about studies. This book is a little bit older, but it talked about a lot of studies and how sunlight benefited diabetes, weight loss, cardiovascular system, and on and on and on. And it basically came to the assumption or the conclusion that skin cancers were probably associated more strongly with refined oil consumption than the sunlight itself. So, anyways, we'll talk about that more when we look at this book. This book is a little bit harder to get. You can find it used though, and it is reasonable if you do that. But this book, Embrace the Sun by Sorensen and Grant, has 1,200 references to studies about sunlight. It's absolutely incredible. And I'm going to just share a tiny bit from it here. This is a graph. The first chapter just dives right in and talks about does sunlight cause skin cancer. So, anyways, you can see here the white line. This is the incidence of melanoma in the U.S. population. It just took off like a rocket all the way from 1935 to year 2000. And you can see the red line, that's sun exposure. How much sun exposure people got in 1935. And this isn't a super, well, it doesn't have all the metrics really displayed on here, but trust me, if you want real hard facts, this book has it. But anyways, the sun exposure has dropped like a rock. So, there's more to the story about melanoma than just sun exposure, that's for sure. Okay, and this is one of the powerful studies that was cited in the book. Um, it was published in the journal Dermatoendocrinology, and the studies were conducted by Godar and colleagues. But it says outdoor workers receive 3 to 10 times the annual UV dose as indoor workers, but have only 50% of the risk for contracting melanoma. Very interesting. So again, it's not just sun exposure. There's more to it. And in general, cancers, as shown by this book and all the studies in there, cancers in general are basically the risk of cancer is greatly lowered by sun exposure. Okay, and so this is just to whet your appetite. These are some of the things that are spoken of in the book. Basically, it says women who are regularly in the sun have 1/10 the risk of breast cancer as women who avoid the sun. Safe, regular sun exposure can eliminate or reduce depression. With the advent of sunscreen and sun avoidance, melanoma incidence has skyrocketed, increasing by 3,000% since 1935. The sun is associated with a remarkable reduction of many common diseases such as cancers, heart disease, autoimmune diseases, the flu, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, and infertility. Sun increases the likelihood of a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby. Women who are sun seekers have only 1/11th the risk of hip fracture as sun avoiders. So don't avoid the sun, but don't burn yourself, right? Don't burn yourself. Just get regular sun exposure and you'll never get a sunburn if you do that way. Okay, so the second part, I want to talk about air, fresh air. And I think there's going to be maybe a short time for comments at the end or questions. So, fresh air. It's very undervalued. But it says here, the free air of heaven by day or night is one of the richest blessings we can enjoy. And, the reason I want to bring up fresh air is, yeah, I had great effects from sun exposure. But if I had to, say which, at this point in my experience, if I had to say, what's the most important thing that it's helped you the most, I would have to say fresh air. And you might think, well, I don't feel any different. Maybe I feel a little better when I'm outside, but I think your eyes may be a little bit open as we go through this. At least I certainly hope so. Okay, so indoor air is notorious. EPA studies of human exposure to air pollutants indicate that indoor levels of some pollutants may be 2 to 5 and occasionally more than 100 times higher than outdoor levels. So they consistently rank indoor air pollution among the top 5 environmental risks to public health. So, you know, that means get outdoors, and it also means improve your indoor air quality, and you can do both. So these are some qualities of perfect air, and the ones that are highlighted kind of in the black, those are the only ones that the public seems to notice. Temperature and humidity. If it's really humid, it obviously feels sticky, muggy, and that humidity range is going to come in interesting later. Of course, obviously, we want high amounts of oxygen, so we can't just well, let me keep going. So we want low levels of particulates such as dust. We don't
I think we lost him, right, Davey?
Yeah, I think we did.
Okay, so let's wait for a minute. He might try to come. He probably trying to come back. Well, anyhow, talking about Sam, we have some questions about, or some comments about the using some chemicals, which probably not a good idea. What I like to use is aloe vera. Aloe vera works. So let's say if I go to the lake or I go um, to the beach, which I hardly go, but sometimes I go to the lake. I use aloe. I bring one aloe leaf and I just put it on, and then I do it again in 30 minutes or so. So sometimes I take my granddaughter and I do the same. So that has worked well. So that will be a sunblocker without causing any issues to the skin. Okay, so that's one point. Another thing, I'm very, very interested about sunlight. We had before another class on sun, and after that, I start spending more time uh, outside. And actually, I build up a porch around my little house. I hope it's working, Davey. Is it working? It seems that it's not showing. But okay, anyhow, we're gonna continue. Um, so I build a porch and I spend considerable amount of time outside. So I have I work outside, I have my standing desk, I put my computer there and I work there. So I understand that the long waves those are especially good for winter or any time of the year, but we can be outside also because the long waves that he was talking about, they're very good anti-inflammatory. So they're powerful anti-inflammatory. So we should spend time every time there is sun, try to go outside. And also if we're working for lunch, we should go outside to eat lunch, because at least we get those long waves that are very healing. The red, infrared light is very healing, that it's very good for us to be outside, even in the winter. Now we're not gonna have in the winter, we're not gonna have the the UVB that he was talking about, the ones that we're gonna get vitamin D, but we are gonna still have the amazing effects of anti-inflammatory effects of the sun in winter. So we highly recommend to be outside, even in the winter. Like today, where I live, it's cold, but when you sit in the sun, it's super nice, even though that around it's cold. If you move to the shade, it's gonna be kind of freezing, but if you go to the sun, it's super nice getting that sun. And also, even if you dress, let's say you have 2 layers of dressing, that light goes through it. So it's very, very incredible. That light can go through it. So it's good to be able to be spend time in the sun also. Just grab a chair and sit in there, or just standing, do some work outside, even with computers or whatever you do, to spend time in the sun, because that is incredibly, incredibly healing. Uh, Actually, they said that in the study showed that it goes deep into your body, 8 centimeters, so about this much. So imagine some areas in your body and in your chest or abdomen is gonna go through the bones even, and it can also go through the organs. So if you have liver issues, can go through your liver, or digestive issues can go through it, through the lungs. So it's super, super healing. So that's why we highly recommend it. When we have programs at our lifestyle center, every day people are outside to get the sun, depending if it's too cold, and it's raining, of course, we don't go outside. But if there is sun, we do go outside. And the walking outside is going to be very, very good also. So that is very important. I'm going to review some of the comments. Ultraviolet and infrared. So the infrared is what we're going to have in the throughout the year, and especially in the winter. Ultraviolet, we're not going to have the effects of vitamin D in the winter, especially winter and until, let's say, November, December, January, February, I believe in March. It depends where you live. So we had to see that difference. So a lot of people said, why go into the sun on winter if we don't not getting the UVB rays to get vitamin D, but we're getting the infrared rays that are incredibly healing, very anti-inflammatory. So that's what we do. So another question here, what about doing shower and scrub after sun exposure? Why is this done? I think it's the other way around. I'm not sure about studies on this, but some people recommend not to take a shower right after you do sunbathing. Okay. Let's see. Denise said, I feel tons better when I'm outdoors. The light is a great mood booster, and the warmth of the sun is both relaxing and invigorating. Yeah, definitely, definitely. It's just super amazing working this. And
Eric's back with us, Mercy.
okay, we have Eric back, so let's
Oh,
let's
yes.
continue. Yeah, that happens. We have this, the connections not always work, but you can put back your PowerPoint. Maybe we still have time.
Yeah,
We
how
go
many
to
more?
20 minutes will work.
Oh,
15
okay.
minutes, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I had to drive to my internet completely went out, so I had to drive to another area. So,
Uh,
okay. Well, yeah, I hope that this will be
it's better.
good. So where I had just left off, and hopefully you can hear me properly, but was basically like we can't just count on air purification in our room, for example, or in our home to give us perfect air. So we need at least these things that I'm listing here and possibly others as well. But this is a powerful quote, and um, you'll see the significance soon here. So, said this is Ellen White writing. I had retired sick and could not sleep for anxiety. And just the background is that her son was sick, very mm, dangerously so. For several hours, she said, I felt pressed for breath. Although sleeping in a large chamber, I arose and opened the door into a large hall and was at once relieved, and soon slept. I dreamed that an experienced physician was standing by my child, watching every breath, with one hand over his heart and with the other feeling his pulse. He turned to us and said, the crisis has passed. He has seen his worst night. I related to him my worn out condition, my pressure for breath, and the relief obtained by opening the door. Said he, that which gave you relief will also relieve your child. He needs air. You have kept him too warm. The heated air coming from a stove is injurious, and were it not for the air coming in at the crevices of the windows, would be poisonous and destroy life. Stove heat destroys the vitality of the air and weakens the lungs. The child's lungs have been weakened by the room being kept too warm. Sick persons are debilitated by disease and need all the invigorating air they can bear to strengthen the vital organs to resist disease. And yet, in most cases, air and light are excluded from the sick room. Okay, so if you understand the basic physics of how wood stoves work, and I have every reason to believe she was speaking of a wood stove, or it could be a fireplace, but either way, they don't just extract the oxygen from the room. That's kind of what an open flame does. If you have a candle, it's just using the oxygen and it's oxidizing the fuel. And so it's basically just using up the oxygen. But a wood stove, it takes a current of air and generally that air is somehow or like fresh air is somehow finding a way in to your home um, through either cracks or through a specific vent. But how could it be said that a wood stove could take away the vitality of the air? Because I thought first, well, maybe oxygen. Um, and that's what some people might think of. So I thought right away about negative air ions. And here's a simplistic graphic about how they're produced. Basically, in the natural environment, there will be some energy source, whether it's the wind blowing through trees, a water, powerful waterfall crashing on rocks below. It could be even the energy in a radioactive gas like radon coming up out of the earth. There are different ways that energy gets into the air, and in the process, different amounts of these air ions are formed, and they're literally electrified bits of air. Specifically, they're typically oxygen molecules like O2. And so it's actually electrified air. And so you can see in the bottom left the the best humidity levels for formation and existence of negative air ions. it is similar to the best uh, humidity range for humans to live as well. Because when you live in a really, really dry climate, your skin might crack, and if you're living in a really humid climate, it feels just muggy and it doesn't feel very great, and you might get mold on your pillowcase like we did in Guatemala. So it's interesting that these negative air ions exist best at comfortable humidity levels. They perform a very fascinating function in the air. They perform probably many functions, but one function we know is that they interact with little bits of dust and other particulate matter, like this simplistic graphic shows. They'll kind of agglutinate or clump together these particles and cause them to drop out of the sky. And so, uh, if you've ever noticed, like after a rainstorm, the air looks really clear. Well, it's probably because it is really clear. It's probably because the dust was literally dropped out of the sky. So, anyways, very fascinating. And okay, here are so these air ions, they only exist for seconds to minutes. And so you can't just like let them in your house from the outside, for a few minutes a day and then just feel that they're going to be doing a great job throughout the rest of the day. They have to be coming in to your home or you have to be breathing them consistently. So these are just some, you know, chat GPT results for indoor versus outdoor levels of negative air ions. But I'll just save you the trouble and sum it up for you that indoors or in cities, the levels are basically non-existent or low. And outdoors, they are in the thousands to tens of thousands or near waterfalls, even up to 100,000. This is per cubic centimeter, by the way. So also just to comment that they they have a hard time existing in small spaces. HVAC ducting would be a prime example, but also small rooms. And so I wonder if that's why Ellen White obtained relief by opening the door of her sleeping chamber into the large hall, because the smaller the room, the greater the chance that they kind of bump into any walls and get neutralized. So very interesting. So yeah, who knew that the air you breathe could be electrically charged? But does that matter, right? Or how much does it matter? Like maybe it matters such an infinitesimally small amount that you wouldn't notice. And so yeah, what we need to focus on are things that will really produce results, like natural methods that will really matter. And so I hope you're going to see that these do matter. This is from How to Live. It says the lungs consist of an infinite number of small cells. Connected with these are small tubes branching out from the bronchial tubes. This is just a description of the lungs and how it works. I'll just skip down, but it said, together with receiving oxygen, electricity is also received and distributed throughout the body. Now, this is not an inspired quote, but when I read this, I was like, wow, if that could be true, that's very fascinating because that's not an accepted scientific thing. And so hold on to your seats. This is good here. So another quote from How to Live, also not inspired, but it says the oxygen, it's actually speaking about an eagle here, and their breathing capacity. It says the oxygen, essential to nutrition, and the electricity, essential to nervous force, are taken into its lungs in very large proportions. So another, you know, quote talking about that the electricity in the air received by the lungs is actually utilized by the body. Okay, this is back from writings of Ellen White. It says air is the free blessing of heaven, calculated to electrify the whole system. Now that when I read that, I was stunned. I thought, wow, because if your body, is running on a low charge, right? Like your battery's low, you can't just plug into the outlet, and get some high voltage dose and it'll just fry you. It won't like recharge you. But to think that the minute electrical charge in the air could electrify the whole system. That was a new thought to me. It says without it, the system will be filled with disease and become dormant, languid, feeble. Then speaking about Brother Smith, probably Uriah, she said he has done his part of in the work at the office well, but still he has needed the assistance of the electricity of pure air and sunlight out of doors to make his work still more spiritual and enlivening. Interesting there, it uses the word spiritual as well. So, um, yeah, and also, of course, it says assistance of the electricity of pure air. Okay, so these air ions, they only exist for seconds or minutes, and many things destroy them. Of course, time. When they attach to the particles in the air to drop them out of the sky and cleaning our air, that neutral in the process of that, it neutralizes them as well. High heat, like coming from wood stoves, also um, basically destroys them. So that's my guess as to how air could lose its vitality in contact with a wood stove. Okay, dry air also is intrinsically antagonistic to negative air ions, and like I said, small spaces. Okay, well, some people might say, well, why can't I just use an air ionizer? And most air ionizers on the market, and it used to be all of them, but most of them produce ozone just by a function. And ozone, it's a toxic gas, and it's generated by the high voltage electric current used between two plates in these um, air ionizers that are on the market. Now, there are really expensive ones from Europe that don't produce ozone, but there are typically plenty of negative air ions in outdoor air. So if we just get outdoor air coming into our homes at all times, that can not only give us the negative air ions, but also the fresh oxygen and get rid of our carbon dioxide and all the other benefits as well. Okay, so during the winter, we try to avoid, well, not that we try to avoid, but we're avoiding sunlight and fresh air due to the cold. So it's a good time that we have this discussion and this presentation to hopefully help us think more deeply about the topic. Um, Speaking about sanitariums, it says those connected should make every effort to encourage the patients to live an outdoor life so far as it is possible for them to do so. Nature is the great physician that will heal them of all their maladies, both spiritual and physical. I thought that was good. Okay. Fresh outdoor air is as healing as medicine and leaves no injurious after effects. Powerful. Okay, and this quote is about Sister Peck. The cool thing is, I know a Sister Peck, and I think she might be listening to this right now. But it says, in the evening it rained in earnest and continued to rain lightly for several hours. But Sister Peck kept her sleeping quarters upon the front piazza. She has slept outdoors so long that she chooses it. She chooses it above indoors, and she has lost her cough. That's so cool. It is a widely known fact that persons who camp out every night or sleep under a tree for weeks together seldom take cold at all. Oh, so wow, who sleeps outdoors though? That's crazy. Anyways, so I even before I knew about negative air ions, I had my office outdoors. I actually put a desk out under a big pine tree and I worked there for most of the year. And it was great, but it was when I started sleeping outdoors that I noticed such a huge difference. So when I worked outdoors and slept outdoors, and I'm not talking in a tent because if you're in a tent, that's a small space and you're not getting the negative air ions. Maybe you're getting a few, I don't know, but certainly not if, because if they come through a mesh like the screen, I seriously believe that most of them are being neutralized by that. But yeah, while I was doing that, I felt, I think, even better than when I was like 20 years old. So of course that was the last fall, and then during the winter it's been a little bit harder to sleep outdoors, um, and work outdoors. But but anyways, these are powerful tools, and yes, it takes some innovation. Yes, it might take some guts. Maybe it takes some type of small investment, whatever it is. But anyways, these are just really important things that we can think about implementing. These are just some pictures in our yard. We slept on this. We have a nice little concrete pad out in our woods, and I also even tried sleeping near a little waterfall. And so, anyways, try negative air ions. But yeah, okay. Well, that's my presentation. Maybe
Mm.
there are some questions, but
Yeah,
thank you
very
so
good,
much.
very good. Um, okay, so we even in winter, I was thinking maybe we can go really warm ourselves up really well and go outside, right? To go for a walk.
Right.
Um, you know, anyhow, still try to spend time outside. And so even in winter, you have to have some flow of air, right, from outside.
Yeah, yeah. It is important. And the Spirit Prophet talks about a lady who really didn't like getting any fresh air in, and this of course was very likely the northeastern United States where it's very cold. And she said that the lady could open her window by degrees, maybe like I don't remember exactly what she said, maybe an inch more every week until it was a few inches, something like that. So she also mentions that it wouldn't be necessary, basically that she should keep the temperature in her room at 65 degrees or less. That seems to be a challenge for people in our generation. I think they wore more layers back then, and maybe, well, yeah, I don't know, but if you wear the right clothing, you can definitely handle 65 degrees.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's not bad. Lately, I've been, you know, having my house with a lower temperature, and your body gets used to it. Even it's 60, I'm fine. Um, but it will take a little practice. Mhm. So, okay, wonderful. Um, if there's no more question, I don't think there is question. Somebody suggesting maybe a tree house sounds great. Um, and yeah, somebody said that this person sleeps with the window open, even in winter. Um, so the book is Sunlight by Zane Khan, right?
Yes,
Right.
that was an Adventist, Dr. Zane Kime.
Mhm. Okay, so um, what do we do? The long waves um, can cross to not to the windows, right? There is some special material that the long waves can go through it.
Yeah, the long waves, the infrared, those penetrate substances way better than all of the other wavelengths of light.
Mhm.
Yes, but um, manufacturers of windows are specifically coating the windows and making the windows so to block the long wave as well, because obviously, that's interpreted by the body as heat. So, they're trying to keep the heat of the summer out and so on. So, yeah, it's great for efficiency as far as heating the home, but not so good for the health.
Mhm. Especially the windows in California, I think they had to be coated a certain way, which are not good at all. Um,
Right.
okay, yeah. And there is certain materials also that people can use, maybe putting in one of the doors to be able to get more of those long waves.
Yeah, I'm sure there are almost anything transparent would, well, technically it wouldn't even have to be transparent probably, but yeah, those infrared rays do just beam through a lot of different substances.
So regular windows that are not coated.
Well, yes, I believe so. Now, whether it blocks some of them, obviously if it's a double pane window, it would probably block, a lot more because that's what they're trying to do is keep the heat out of the house.
Mhm.
And
Mhm. Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much. That I think this is going to help us all to be more mindful to follow these laws of health that God has given us, especially, the sun is one of the laws that most of people don't follow because, they're working inside of offices and then going to stores inside. So very few people spend times outside, but this is super important. Um, let's see. I think it's me, Eric, who sleep with windows open. Let's see if we have anything else. Okay, please ask him to clarify when do the shower and scrub, before or after sun exposure? And will plastic allow UVB waves to pass through?
okay, so for the first question, basically, this is a little bit controversial, so I don't want to stir up too much controversy. The doctor recommended the thorough friction bath after the sun exposure. Now, I've heard people say that if you take a bath or wash after sun exposure, you're going to actually get rid of all the vitamin D you just generated. Um, I've tried to look into that more thoroughly, and as long as you don't do a lot of soap and really, as long as you don't use a lot of soap and scrub really hard with the soap, um, I don't see how you would lose that oil-based, um, components out of your skin. But
Mhm,
yeah, a light rinse off, it's like almost guaranteed you're not going to lose your vitamin D. So
mhm,
as far as the second question, um, all plastic blocks UV. Um, I think both A and B. Because and the reason is if like even like say greenhouse plastic, um, if it didn't block the UV, it would actually disintegrate so fast. So they have to add, even additional UV blockers into the plastic to block it because if you've ever used like sheet plastic outside, it disintegrates so fast in the sun, especially if it's transparent. So yeah,
mhm. Okay. I don't think we have more questions, but thank you so much, Eric. And we're gonna ask you to do another class for our membership. And you have some other topic that's very interesting, very important for many people. But thank you so much. And I'm just gonna close. I'm just gonna let everybody know tomorrow we have graduation, the same channel on YouTube at 7 o'clock. So we'll invite you to come and join. We have people usually giving us their testimony how these courses help them, their health, and also doing the medical missionary work. So I hope you join us. Another thing that will be happening is January 25th, we're going to start another class, another training, and it's geared to people that are leading with autoimmune disorders also, or it's called autoimmune recovery course, but it's also training to be medical missionaries. So if you know anybody that's sick with an autoimmune disease or any chronic issues, this course is going to be very helpful. We have so many um, testimonies about it. So if you want to watch testimonies, you can also go to this YouTube channel, Med Missionary, and you're going to see many testimonies. And what else we have graduated 95 people from a whole union of pastors and also leaders and wives of a country. And this is in Central America. So we're very, very excited. This is the Central America, Nicaragua Union. So we're so excited that, what they have learned, they're going to implement it in the churches and going to use as some outreach these programs for the communities. So we're very excited about that. So if you know of any president of a conference that would like to talk to us, so we love to talk to them, and hopefully they can do the same thing for their conference. So, and that's all for today, and we're so grateful that you joined. And let's close with a word of prayer, unless Eric has anything else to tell us.
Thank you so much, Mercy. No, that's good.
Okay, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this amazing loss of health that you have given us to recover from health issues, and also to have a good endurance, good health, and help us to be mindful of all these loss of health that are so amazing, amazing principles that you have given us. So please continue guiding us so we can reach many people using this loss of health. And I just want to ask you, bless Eric also, his ministries, and everybody that is following this program and listening, that you bless them as all of us implement what we learn. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless everybody. Take care. We'll see you next Sabbath.